I'm not saying it will necessarily that the heartbreak equals ending the relationship, because I don't think that always happens. But I think that there is some fact to face, that if you're actually going to be willing to open yourself up to someone, and there they are in their different mind, experiencing the world in their different ways, and they risk opening themselves to you, there's no way you don't hurt each other. It's just not possible. So, shit. So it's part of the risk that I'm taking, though, is saying I risk this, and also I risk hitting that moment and learning that I could hold me through that. And maybe I don't even know what I could hold myself through yet, because I haven't faced it yet. But one day I will face the next thing, and then I'll learn that I can handle that.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently, and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Well, welcome to episode 332. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have a fantastic conversation with Jules. Jules is an educator, a therapist, a writer, a neuroscience nerd, a teacher, and a mom, and we have such an amazing conversation about so many things with her.
You forgot one label.
Oh, yeah?
All around badass.
Yeah. You're right. I should have included that one.
I agree, but we're not re-recording. So we are super excited about this conversation with Jules. And one of the things that really underscores this whole conversation is really just intentionality, relational intentionality. And as you'll hear, Jules spent some time in her earlier years exploring non-monogamy, but when she met her now husband, they had very intentional conversations and very intentional decisions to be monogamous. And so she sort of unpacks that. And as you'll hear, it's not necessarily her preference, but this is what she has chosen, and she has very happily chosen this. And so wonderful conversation, and she unpacks things in such an incredible way. This conversation the neuroscience nerd piece, this conversation is incredible.
Yes,
I'm so grateful. I feel like we were very privileged to be able to sit down and have this conversation, and I'm very grateful for this conversation. So thank you, Jules.
Me too. I agree completely. Jules is also the author of the new book, Setting Boundaries That Stick. It is amazing. We do highly recommend checking it out. She also co-hosts the podcast, Why Does My Partner? And links to everything will be in the show notes.
So without too much further ado, we will jump into the podcast interview with Jules right now. And for the rest of you, before we jump in, we just have a couple of other quick things to say. The first thing is that if you would like to be one of our premium subscribers, so you do not get to listen to all of our wonderful announcements at the beginning, you can do so by going to our homepage at normalizingnonmonogamy.com, scrolling down until you see the information about the premium subscription. And for just $4 a month, you can skip us.
Yes.
We'll be sad, but also grateful at the same time.
But don't worry, you still get important dates in the outro.
Speaking of important dates,
April 11th, mark your calendar right now. It'll be our next virtual meet and greet. These virtual meet and greets are open to anyone. You just must be open-minded and respectful. They're a great way to come and meet a lot of like-minded, open-minded people. We utilize Zoom breakout rooms and give you questions to, you get into small groups, discuss the questions, and then we bring you back, swap out the rooms, and you do it again. So you have a really great opportunity to meet a lot of different people throughout the evening. You can sign up at our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. The banner on the homepage right there says it all. April 11th, mark your calendars and join us.
One of the other benefits of these is you can take the questions that we ask you all night long.
And go ask other people.
Then you go on your first dates, your second dates, your fifth dates, and you get to ask these questions to other people.
Another great thing about these virtual meet and greets is you get to meet many amazing people who are part of our online community as well.
Oh, wow. Look at that, Emma.
Look at that transition.
What a handoff. So we should tell you about our virtual community. If you're also wanting a little bit more than once a month to be able to hang around people like this, we would love for you to join our virtual community. Emma and I are in there all day, every day with nearly 300 other amazing people from all over the world, supporting one another, laughing together, loving together. We cry together sometimes. We have virtual calls once a month. We do have virtual calls once a month, but we have a men's group, we have a women's group, we do Q&As, and people are in the app all day, every day, supporting one another. Highly recommend it. If you feel like you're a little bit alone, this is the place to be. Once you're in there, you'll be like, I didn't know I could make 300 friends as an adult.
Yeah, like almost immediately.
Nobody knew it was possible to, in a jiffy, make almost 300 friends overnight.
To sign up, go to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and click on the community tab and find out all of the information right there. Also, while you're on our website, go over to the resources tab, check out our favorite way to get tested for STIs. That is stdcheck.com. I always say it way too fast, so I was trying to slow it down.
Not today.
It is our favorite way to get tested, and it's the service that Finn and I use as well. It is very quick and easy and discreet, and you get to know your sexual health status, which makes it the best.
And if you use the links on our webpage or in the podcast player show notes, you save $10, which brings the cost of a 10-panel test down to $129. It also helps support the show financially, so we can keep bringing you amazing guests like Jules and the amazing people that are coming in the future.
Yes.
And we get to eat dinner every night, which we love doing. I eat a lot of food. So thank you for using those links. And more importantly, thank you for knowing your sexual health status and being awesome sexual health advocates.
And finally, a quick reminder to reach out to us, send us a voicemail, send us an email. We would love to hear from you. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, let us know. Or if you have any comments or questions, also reach out to us and let us know. And with that, let's go talk to Jules.
Let's do it. Well, welcome to the podcast, Jules. We are super excited to talk today. We've got a little bit of a different flavor on non-monogamy today, and we're super excited to dig in, to hear your story, and to learn more about you, and to share your work out into the world, because it is incredible, amazing work.
Aww.
And this is not a dig at all. We're on the road. We're actually using your book right now to hold our microphone up to a higher level. And I have a bookmark in it. So we are currently using your book for not just education, but to bring you this podcast.
Yeah, I love that. I love that my book can support in multiple ways simultaneously.
It can.
That's right. When you're jumping from Airbnb to Airbnb and you can't find something, you're like, well, we'll throw some books under the microphone. So that's how high tech we are.
I love it. I love it.
So to jump in, do you mind introducing yourself for us, for the listeners, for anybody who doesn't know who Jules is?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Jules. Juliane Taylor Shore is my full name, but nobody calls me that. Everybody just calls me Jules, which is great. And I am a therapist and an educator of therapists and the general populace. And I'm a geek for neurobiology. And so I use all things neurobiology to help us work with our brains better. So I do that. And I am married, and my husband's going to kill me. I cannot even remember how long we've been together for like 17 years, I think. That would mean married for 15. No, 14. Anyway, something like that. So I've been with my partner for a long time, and we have a daughter, and she's 10, and we have a dog, and I live a life here doing therapy stuff.
I love it.
And when I'm not doing this, I color shoes. It's super weird, but I have this, I watch like reruns of television I love that is soothing to my brain.
Yes.
And I color shoes with markers and give them to my friends.
What a fun hobby. I love it.
Well, I like doodling and coloring, but I thought, well, why only do it on paper?
Yeah.
And then throw it away.
Right.
I could
do it on something fun.
And give it to somebody. I actually do not own a pair of these shoes. One day I will make them for myself, but mostly I just make them and give them away.
What inspiration too. I love that, like, just find something fun and unique to yourself that calms yourself and regulates yourself and dive into it. And and you get a gift at the end.
And I get a gift at the end. Yeah, exactly. I get something cool. This is super unique to give to besties all over. So
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
I love it. Well, would you be open to sharing a bit about your current relational dynamic? And then we're going to figure out how. That's what we're going to figure out. How.
Yeah.
Sure. So my current relational dynamic is that I am in a monogamous partnership. And that would not actually be my personal preference.
Yeah.
And I have chosen monogamy because I chose this man.
Yeah.
I love it. And we knew this because
surprise.
Not a surprise.
So we first learned about you a few months ago. You were on Libby Simbach's podcast, Making Polyamory Work. You did 2 episodes in the end of November, beginning of December about boundaries, which is also what your book is about. And we told people about that a little bit ago. But you mentioned in there that, yeah, you are monogamous, but that really not necessarily your preference. And we were like, ooh, juicy. We would love to talk about that because we often get the flip side of, we talk to a non-monogamous person whose partner is monogamous and they're trying to figure out a mono-poly dynamic. And to have the choice be made the opposite direction is amazing. And we're excited to talk about that today.
Yeah, I love it. Yep, that's true.
Yes. I'd love for you just to start a little bit about your views of like non-monogamy and monogamy, like relationship structure as an identity, as a choice versus a choice.
Oh, well, I think that feels like a spectrum to me. I think for some people, it probably is an identity. And for some people, it's a choice.
Yeah.
And I'm probably somewhere in the middle of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty fluid about who I'm attracted to. And so one of the big griefs of being in a monogamous relationship for me has been not able to be with women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that feels hard sometimes still, but we've been together for a long time. So like it does not feel hard is not even really the way to put it. It's more like, oh, there's this other sistership life I could have had.
Yeah.
But I couldn't have had it and have the things that I love about this life.
Yeah.
And so saying goodbye and watching that ship sail is something I still do. So, especially around the fluidness of my sexuality, which does feel a little bit more like an identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I was going to say, mm-hmm. I think often, right, people could say, I think there's a lot less conversation or not just a disagreement. There's a lot less undecidedness around your sexuality being an identity. It is who you are versus, well, I'm choosing to be, pansexual, bisexual, whatever identity. You don't typically choose that, but it's interesting how that then weaves into a choice of what you do with it. And I think that is really the core at what is here. As you said, like, I chose a life. I wanted this person. I wanted this life. And that meant I don't do this other stuff. And I may even have to not experience a part of my identity.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, the, how open a relationship is feels a little bit more choice related in my own system than an identity. For me, what feels more identity based is my attraction to multiple gender.
Yeah.
And of all the genders. I just love all the genders. I actually kind of pan that way. I like all the genders.
Love it.
I would love to be romantic with all of you. That's just the truth of how I function. But it felt really clear, even within our first year of exploring and being together, my husband and I, that he's identity-wise monogamous.
Mm-hmm.
And he is identity-wise he's heterosexual. And so, like, that's like who he is, and that any kind of going outside the lines of that would be not just painful, but like a betrayal of self for him.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was going to say yes to this partnership, then I knew monogamy was going to be the thing we were saying yes to. Because it felt like I never wanted to get into a space where I was like, well, this is who I am, so you just have to say yes to this thing. But it did feel inside me like I could choose to say, well, how important is this person to me versus how important is this exploration to me?
Mm-hmm.
And the freedom that comes with that. And for me, it felt really clear that what I wanted was to build a life with this human.
Mm-hmm.
And to ask him to say yes to a non-monogamous or a monogamous poly kind of combo would be asking for him to betray him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was either say, that felt not in my integrity.
Yeah.
It didn't. And so it felt like I don't ever want to be coercive with him about this. And I don't think that people who are asking for it are coercive. I just knew that for me to know that about him and then to later on say, hey, but can we open this up? Would have been not cool. I knew all going in, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It totally makes sense. And I think a couple of curiosities.
Yeah.
Had you explored any of that before the two of you met?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So non-monogamy has been something that was part of your journey up until
already. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. And have been, I've had partners of different genders and have had very, very open and only semi-open. And all of that's been part of my world before.
So you had that experience going into that relationship, which really helps you. Sounds like you were able to figure out more about yourself. And so that when this came, you knew it's like you were going into this relationship. I still know all this stuff about myself and I can make these choices.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I think that gives a lot of context that you, because I could see two people coming to this, neither of them having outside or previous experiences. And you're saying, well, I don't want to coerce him and force him into do something he doesn't want to do. But then I have to give up who I am and what I want to do. But, this context paints it in a little bit different of, I lived some of that, I did it, and I'm now making I want to say an informed choice where I've had the experience, I've had both experiences, and now I'm choosing without saying, well, I'll never know that part of me. To me, that's a very different.
It feels really different, right? I knew, and it doesn't feel like giving up who I am to say yes to monogamy. I want to be really clear about that. It doesn't even feel, really, there's some sadness in it. There's grief in it, but to give up, having ongoing relationships that are physical with women, feels like there's grief in that, but I have an awesome fantasy life, so I'm cool. I got that going on already. So it doesn't feel like I left that part of me behind in order to be here. And he knows this, he knows all of this. I mean, we've had various moments where there have been oh, wait, there's been moments where he's contemplated, oh, wait, should we be open so you can have this side of yourself more? And he's like, I just don't think I can do it. I'm just like, sweetie, I'm not asking you to do that. I know that. It's okay. I can have it in here. I'm pointing to my own head. I can have it. I can have it in here.
Yeah.
I don't have to have it out there. That giving that part up felt like an okay trait for me.
Yeah. Would you be open to going back and sharing a little bit of? We don't need to spend the whole time on it, but just how non-monogamy came into your world to begin with, and sort of what that path looked like. Like, how long were you exploring that? What did it look like before you came into this realization of, I want this man in my life, and I'm okay giving up what I've fostered for the last however.
Yeah, sure. I've been in a variety of different kinds of relationships. So when I was in high school, it was monogamous boyfriend, right? And then I got into college and we're exploring things. And that felt like, okay, so you have to know this about me. I was a theater major. And I don't know how many people out there are theater majors, but it's really wild in those spaces. So those spaces felt like, so I was in a long distance relationship during that time with someone who he and I had met, and he was a senior, I was a freshman. He lives in New York, and he's like, yeah, but I want to stay with you, but I don't want to like not have sex for the next 3 years of our lives. I was like, me neither. Cool. So I had like lots of openness throughout that entire experience. And so it was him, he introduced it as an idea. And I was like, okay, let's try it out.
Yeah.
Why not? This could be fun. And so I had girlfriends, I had boyfriends, went to play parties sometimes. Like there's a lot of different, that journey was fun and fine and long. And I stayed in this really more committed long distance space with him, and we would visit each other 4 or 5 times a year, but that was all we could afford. Or like poor artists at that point in our lives. And then I went to New York later on with a job, and so we ended up living in the same city, but at that point he and I had broken up, and I got into a relationship that was really fascinating. There was this time where I went, maybe I'm monogamous, and then I started dating this guy who really wanted to be non-monogamous, and I freaked out. I was like, no, I'm doing this commitment thing. Oh, it was just hellish on both of us.
But oh my gosh, it's all about bouncing around to see what's
right for me, right? And then when my husband and I met, actually, I was married to someone else. So I've been married twice, and I was married, and it was a really sticky situation. It was not a pleasant thing, and we were monogamous, and that was his hope, and he was not actually monogamous with me, but he was saying he wanted that.
Yep. We've heard that story.
Yep, totally. He was saying he wanted that. That's not actually what happened, but that's fine. I actually feel very relieved that relationship's over. So when I met my husband, I was actually married. So when I met the guy I'm with now, we were like in each other's circles like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a really hard marriage and ending that and getting out of that. And then we were friends for a little while. We were friends for like a year or so after the divorce happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I say it like it happened to me. I filed for divorce, and then I got divorced. It was a very successful choice for my life. And then my husband and I were together, and I was like getting it, and it was fine too. I felt like I had explored a lot at that point. Mm-hmm. It was just like, this is solid. This feels good. And bless him, he asked me to marry him, even though I told him I never wanted to get married to anyone ever again. But he tried me on anyway. And I really started exploring, like, well, what would I be saying yes to? Internally, this was all an inside process. What would I be saying yes to in going down this road with him? And what would I be saying no to when we go down this road? Because I think every decision we make, every choice we have, there's a grief in it. So if I say yes to this choice, then I'm saying no to all the ones that I'm not making.
Yeah.
So there's no way. When I think about relationship structures, I think about how many of us want to find a way to avoid the grief part. And I don't think that's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no way to be with your husband both monogamously and non-monogamously at the same time.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
It's just not possible.
Yeah. Although some could argue your previous husband gave it a whirl. He
tried.
He was
He tried, but no. Yeah.
I think there's no way, in an open way, in a long-term way, to experience both for what they can really be, right? Without hiding and
right. And I don't know if it was just because of where we were in our lives, or the fact that I knew so many theater people, or what was it? But people at that time, even though it wasn't really being talked about as much, I mean, I'm old. I'm not old, but I'm like 46. I'm not young. I'm in the middle part of my life. So when I think back, I'm like, oh yeah, I went to college in the 90s. People were not talking super openly at that point about non-monogamy the way we are now.
No.
And in the theater world, people were.
That's what the piece I was going to bring back in was this experience you had in the theater world at an early age.
Yeah.
Even though it was in the 90s. And like,
I'm 18, 19, 20, and people are like, well, of course you're with somebody else. Me too. Great. Let's play. Cool. There was so much openness in it and so much like, it's fine. We're just exploring. We're having fun together.
Yeah.
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 And how, I guess, common that is in that community, in that space, in that, but how uncommon it is outside of that. I mean, there's a few other spaces too, but in general.
Yeah.
And you had the opportunity there to be just immersed in it from an early age that gave you that chance to really explore yourself and to almost experience the removal of shame around it too.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. And I think it helps that I've done therapy for a long time. Like as a client, I came into becoming a therapist because I was a client. And, you know, one day looked at my therapist and said, Patrick, how did you get your job? I think I might want it. It seems like a pretty good deal, this deal. You can make money doing this, talking to people about their shit. This is awesome. So I think, you know, learning to discover how kindness towards yourself and openness towards yourself is really possible has been a really big help in that too, for sure. So I think there's like the non-shaming historical lens. And then there's all of the compassion work I've done, compassion work towards me, compassion work towards other people as I move into bigger and bigger, like, wait a second. What if we're all a little bit right? Can we all just like embrace each other and be curious about what genius lies in everybody around us? As I get more into those spaces, it feels like I'm not ashamed about any part of it. I'm not ashamed about saying yes to being monogamous, even though that's not really my natural leaning. Like, it's a choice I made consciously. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it feels like non-shame kind of all around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm curious in that journey of everybody is a little bit right, for sure. And yet there are times where, and I mean, this is really the core of this, where your right and somebody else's right are no longer compatible. And now we have to slant I'm not going to be 100% right. Maybe I can do 90 or 80. And I think it's a lot of that dance of figuring out how much of my truth, my rightness, can I don't know if give up. I mean, it is giving up. How much of that can I give up to meet somebody else's? And I think that's where that grief you talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think it's ever, for me, it's not about giving up rightness. It's more like saying, of course, non-monogamy is great. And he can say, of course, monogamy is great. And if I say yes to your way, which I do, then it means having the grief about the part that isn't exercised out loud anymore. Right?
But that your belief did not just become no longer right, or
no,
we're using right in quotes and correct.
Yeah, I'm putting super big air quotes around it, but I don't let go of the value of non-monogamy partnerships. And I'm a therapist, and I see lots of couples who are in open dynamics of one kind or another, or polypods, or there's lots of different versions of that I've seen. So being a therapist who sees how well it works over and over and over, which I do, I'm a huge fan. Yay. Right? I think some of the most secure relationships I've ever seen have an open dynamic. That's awesome. And I don't have to give up any of the rightness about that to say yes to monogamy because I say yes to a partner who for him, it's exactly the right thing that we have a close dynamic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm just in awe too about the conversations that must have occurred at the beginning of that relationship. I mean, you're coming in with all of this like knowledge about yourself, and he's coming in with knowledge about himself.
Yeah.
And you're meeting and like laying it all out toward each other so that you can make a conscious choice in that relationship. And let's be real, like not many relationships as often have that going into it.
That is part of why I say yes to this man. It's because we can navigate those sticky things and he can accept me for who I am without judging me. And I can accept him for who he is without judging him. Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, that just feels like part of the magic. Not magic. I say magic as if it's not work. It is work. You have to regulate yourself and shit. It's a pain in the ass. Let's be clear.
Yeah, this isn't just like a magic carpet ride, right?
No, this is not. I did not find some magical unicorn human who is the most amazing perfection. No. We're both totally fucked up, but in like the genius ways that people are. And so us being able to navigate that and saying, well, here's how it is for me. And then have someone say, well, it's not that for me. Oh, I'm going to get a little emotional as I say this. I think my husband's level of acceptance has been healing for me. Mm-hmm. And I think my level of acceptance has been healing for him too. I think we came from spaces where that wasn't really a part of our lives in our early life. Yeah. And so having a long-term partnership where we can be really accepting and not have to agree to celebrate the other one's way is really handy. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And finding a way that it works, compromising in the middle of it, like, or choosing one or the other, like, so that it works and talking about it.
Right. And there have been moments where he's brought up, oh, should we like have someone come in? But the nerve, like he's bringing it up, sweet one. He's bringing it up. He so doesn't, like, I can feel every cell in his body going, please say no, please say no. Like, I'm fine, sweetie. It's really okay. I really did say a full-hearted yes to this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think similar to the question Emma touched on earlier about the conversations you two must have had, I imagine there was, and you don't have to speak for him, of course, but I imagine there was fear when you said yes, because it sounds like you both laid your cards on the table. Like, this is how I view, this is how I view.
I told him I love open relationships. I'm fine with that dynamic. He's like, but
when you say yes, though, then he has to trust.
Yeah.
She really means yes. And she's not going to bring this up next week and the week after and 3 months later and every year on my anniversary. And
it takes trust on both sides. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think at this point, because we've been together for a long time, 17 years together. We'll hit 18 this June. I think is right. I can't remember when we get together versus get married, but yeah, we've been together since 06. 09 was when we got married. So it's coming up on what, year 18. Mm-hmm. So I think at this point, because there isn't a badgering about it at all, I don't think I could ask him later if I ever have, but I don't think so. Yeah. I don't think so. Because I think I was so clear inside. Because for him, he's just always been really, for him, monogamy and respect are the same thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to change that about him.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I love about this, and I don't know that there's a question in here, but it is just a thought around tying in sort of the journey we're on, which I see what's interesting. We talk to a lot of people where this happens. They get together very young. We got together when we were freshmen in college. We knew each other since 7th grade. And we've been open almost that whole time. However, I'm not 17-year-old Finn.
Yeah.
And Emma is not 18-year-old Emma, which is roughly the ages when we got 18 and 19. So we've now been trying to figure out who we are while in this marriage and this partnership, navigating all of these things. And we've arrived here going, okay, well, we've got to do some really hard healing and work to give ourselves that space to become who we are. And what I gather and what I sort of hear in your story is you did that in college, sort of with some different partners. Then you got married. You learned more about yourself. You get a divorce. And you really have, at this point, a solidified view of, again, probably not forever and ever, who is Jules today. And you get to bring that person, you get to bring a 30-year-old version of yourself that has done, 10 years of work of being an adult to a partnership. That's very different than we've been trying to do that work while in the partnership. We've been influencing each other, pulling each other, molding each other into what we think we should be.
Yeah. Isn't that the way?
Right. When you said like your acceptance of him has been healing for him and his acceptance of you has been healing for you. And I know we're just talking about us too, but like, I think this is so common when you've been together from a very early age. You're never really sure. Are you accepted? Are you accepted for yourself? Are you accepted for the version of yourself that they see or that they've molded
or that you were as a teenager?
That you were as a teenager. Yeah, I'm still looking at Emma like I'm going to say 18, not younger than that, because that's not what I meant by that comment. But we're still our 18-year-old selves in some ways, and we're not.
And you're not. Well, I think that's the marker of a long-term relationship that can be really stable and fulfilling, right? Is that who you are is going to change. And I don't care if you got married at 50 or if you got married at 17. Now, certainly, if you're younger, if you get together at 18, 19 years old, there's a lot of change that happens, right? Between 18, 19, and let's say 32.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's a big exploration, expansion, right? And then it feels a little bit more solid. But I'll tell you, the research on this actually shows that it never gets solid.
Yeah, that you're constantly changing.
You don't actually become some version of yourself that then sticks. What's actually true is that you keep transforming through time, all the time. And yes, whoever, okay, so think about it like this. Think about the self as a river rather than like a solid object. So think of the self as the river, and the river is flowing constantly. And the feelings and thoughts that are happening in you, that's the water that's flowing in the river. And the people you choose to bring into your world, that's the rain or the drought. Those are the rocks that fall in your river. And then also the world happens around you. So sometimes people may hurl a boulder into your river. You didn't ask them to do that, but there you are and you're stuck, right? And all of these experiences are going to change you. And so I think when I think about my partnership, and one of the things I really deeply appreciate about him is his ability to say yes to the flow of that experience. So I'm changing and he's changing, and to be able to say out loud, which we can both do, hey, I'm seeing you as this old version of you in this moment, but I'm not sure why. And we can slow everything down and go, yeah, I have no clue why that's happening. Hold on, what's going on inside? And have those conversations is really lovely. And they happen, I say it like we're in these like long, huge conversations all the time. We actually have them in like 2 minutes. That's just it. That's how our lives flow. And we're raising a kiddo together. So, there's a lot that goes into the parenting part and the running a business part, blah, blah, blah. We got a lot going on. But it might look like this moment of like, well, Sometimes I wish you could be like this. Oh, I can't be like that. Oh no, now I'm disappointing you. You're right. I just put that on you. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'll get out and move on with our day.
Yeah. Well, I love the river analogy, and what came to mind just sort of at that last bit, you said you were like, these are happening in these like 2-minute conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think this is maybe I'm recognizing some of what has happened for us, and I imagine happened often, is
Mm-hmm.
thinking about those 2-minute conversations as little pebbles that get dropped in your
Mm-hmm.
river.
Mm-hmm.
And so you said, like, sometimes somebody comes along and throws a boulder in your river, and it's obvious, and you're like, damn, there's a boulder. We have to go around the boulder.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we should go around the boulder. But if it's pebble, 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 and pretty soon there's thousands of pebbles that are the size of a boulder.
Yeah.
But you still want to try to drive through the damn pebbles because you don't see them, because the changes are small enough
Mm-hmm.
that you're just like, I'm going to go through the boulder. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that is where we, in some ways, have to like tear the thing down to and I wish we didn't have to, but I think if you miss those, and I'm saying for us, like, we've missed a lot of those pebbles.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like we have to now do a complete overhaul because we missed like putting a touch up here and a touch up there, because we were just like, the wall's not, we don't need to fix anything. Everything's good because we're just driving through the pebbles.
Yeah.
And so I think there is like some value in going through like a giant relationship change, like a divorce, and then starting over because the boulder was there.
Yeah.
And you can't ignore it anymore.
Yeah. And sometimes it does take a total upheaval. And oh my gosh, we didn't realize our rivers were going like that for the last 5 years. Oh no, I can't even see your river anymore. Where are we?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that could happen at any phase of your life and
Absolutely.
any of your relationship too. Like it could happen at any point.
Yeah. And I feel like, Adam and I, that's my husband, it feels to me like we've already had 3 marriages inside this one.
Mm-hmm.
There was our early courtship and marriage, and there was this adventure travel period we got into, and then we had a kiddo. And that feels like a really different marriage. Since we've added the kiddo, that feels like a really, really different marriage. And in that way, I have a lot of celebration for folks who come in who have open and poly dynamics and they are raising children together. Because I can feel how much stress a kid puts into a relationship if I were also dealing with the dynamics of that, and how do we share with our kids that this is, I'm like, for those who are doing the open thing, I think this is one of those moments where I do appreciate, I don't know, see, I argued with myself in my head. Here's how it is to be in Jules' mind. It's like, I had said something and then I had an argument with it. So here, both things are true. I'm actually deeply grateful to my husband for being monogamous. And I think there's some ways that's easier as we are raising our kid together, to have just the two of us be part of this dynamic. Also, it kind of sucks that just the two of us are part of this dynamic. And actually, I kind of want other people to be involved. Wouldn't it be great if I had a girlfriend and she was part of parenting our kid too? But also I get how complicated that is. So I guess I'm holding both and around this and sitting in such deep respect and grace towards the folks I've worked with who do it and well. They're amazing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I think complication is the best word for it. It adds complication. There's no way it can't.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm curious within that, the conversation comes up, and it's fresh in my mind because we also just did an interview a few minutes ago, where the conversation around the idea of wanting to bring other people in to sort of like, it takes a village, right, to raise a kid, and right, the value of different mindsets, different viewpoints, and so right, we could do that by, you could do that by having another partner, having a girlfriend, having whatever other type of partner. But right, we can also do that by bringing in deep friendships, or any type of friendship, any person we bring into the world. And I think there's often a conversation around platonic partners. And I think
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious around how
Mhm.
you and your husband have navigated the conversations around this, because the difference between, let's say, I'm going to go out, I'm going to use a different gendered example for myself because
Mhm.
I'm primarily heterosexual.
Mhm.
So if I was to go out and have like a wonderful dinner with somebody and we sat and talked for hours and went to a movie and then came home, like most people could look at it and go, well, you're dating that woman. And I'm like, no,
Mhm.
no, we're just really close friends. And Emma doesn't like these types of movies and she doesn't like this type of food. And so I do that with this person once a
Mhm.
month. And, let's say we had a kid. Sometimes our kid wants to come along because they don't get to experience horror movies because Emma's afraid. And so we like to
Mhm.
scare the shit out of our kids sometimes.
Mhm.
Whatever it
Right,
is,
right, right.
how do you draw the line then between, or in your relationship, the conversation between this is a friend and this is quote unquote a partner that is now non-monogamous?
Gotcha. Um, well, I think when I think about our dynamic, I think it's really clearly a romantic and
Yeah.
sexual line.
Okay.
So I have plenty of friends who are like very much like Stella has a fairy godmother, and Stella, that's my daughter. Um, my kiddo has aunts.
Mm-hmm.
One of my best friends.
Mhm.
She's not actually a blood aunt,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So there are plenty of people who, oh, I'm going out on a date night with Kim, and it's not romantic in any way. It's not sexual in any way, but we would spend 6 hours just gabbing over coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And I have those folks in my life.
Yeah.
So I think for us, it's like, are the friendships deep friendships? Yeah, but they're not partnerships,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. And I'm wondering too about this, and maybe this makes it easier for me to say yes to the monogamy thing, is even when we were doing the open thing in college, having a primary partner always felt like home to me.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than having more of that open dynamic where you don't necessarily have a primary, that never, for me, home base always felt like primary. So even if one day something shifted and all of a sudden we decided to do something in a different format than we have now, I would still want me and him to be primary partners. That would be fit for me. That would be, if he wanted something other than that, I would probably be hitting the brakes and going, and it doesn't feel
Yeah.
good. So I think wanting that, I have this one person who's my go-to person, has always felt like a fit for me. So I guess I'm wondering if that makes it feel really easy to draw the line, because I'm not kissing anybody else, which
Mm-hmm.
is what I promised.
Right.
Right. But I have friendships all over who I sit and talk to for hours, or go do something that he doesn't want to do, or yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. I love that. And it wasn't intended to be a
Mhm.
challenge of
No,
your,
no,
like,
I was really curious about
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the idea that we often pick up from people and that we've experienced ourselves is that it's not a shot at your partner or a negative at your partner that they don't want to do something or that they don't share an
Oh,
interest.
yeah.
And if you can get that interest fulfilled somewhere else,
Mhm.
be it with a friend, a family member,
Mhm.
random person, whatever it is,
Mhm.
and maybe it is a partner, but it sounds like what I kind of gathered there was you get maybe enough from your marriage and your partnership with your husband,
Mhm.
plus the friendships and ancillary connections you have, that
Yeah.
don't feel enough of a void to be like, I need to take one
Right.
of these to another level, that you fill in the gaps that
Mhm.
you need to feel like a whole happy human.
Yeah. I think you're naming it perfectly. That it honestly, between raising the kiddo, and I'm really, really close to my daughter, and we have an awesome dynamic, and we do mommy daughter dates that he doesn't go on, and they do daddy daughter dates that I don't go on. And there's like, we just have so much flow in our lives around, of course, who you bring into your life is going to be a natural part of our life, honey, go for it.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, whether it's him, we have a joke in our family, whether it's him watching one of the sports balls with someone who's not me, which would be delightful. Go for it. Or it's me having a 6-hour chat about something in psychology, which I want to do, and he absolutely has no interest in. I'm married to a musician. He's like, whatever. I don't even go there. So there's all sorts of stuff I do and explore and have these deep friendships, and we talk in these like really slow and deliberate ways and stuff. So I think you're right. I think you're nailing it in a way I hadn't seen before, which I love. So I'm like appreciating you in this moment, Finn.
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing like, oh yeah, what's going on actually is I have as deep a connection with this person and as deep a connection with this person as I do with my husband, actually. Mm-hmm. But they're in different ways. And the line for us is none of those other ones have romance or sex in them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have lots of love in them. They have lots of connection in them. Just that's the line. Yeah.
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 Yeah. No, I really appreciate you like laying it out like that, because I think it can get muddy in a lot of people's minds and how it works for you. And it, gets back to this idea in many cultures, most cultures, I feel like that one person you're taught, one person is your everything. And this is the model, this is the model, but like monogamy, I think monogamy reinforces that, but this is a model that in your relationship, like, no, like that's not, you can have monogamy and have all of these other beautiful connections in your life too. And that's all of those are so fulfilling, and we need those as humans.
Yes. And I think, there's so many people who I would count like in my very, very, very close inner circle. I could think of 10 folks, boom, 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 off the top of my head, that I spend enormous amounts of time with. And my husband's one of them. And I think we both feel that way, that there doesn't have to be, you don't have to get your needs met from one human. And that's a lot to put on somebody, right?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just the visual of the pebbles and the boulders and the river come to me here with that idea that your river should only flow where I want it to, or where we can flow together, versus saying, yeah, great, you go do your sports balls and I'll see you in a day and I'm going to go talk about my stuff. And versus like, well, you should only watch things that we like to watch together, because it's a threat if you want to go and watch that game with somebody else. And I think that, that openness to say we can be different and we will still come back. You can go and have the most amazing time. You can go to the game and you can wear the foam finger and you can do it all. And I still trust that you're going to come back, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, and we're going to pick up our life and keep going on. And maybe in a month you go do it again, but that doesn't mean you've decided, I want that so bad that I'm never going to come home because I'm going to live at the football stadium, right? Maybe that happens. But it's unlikely. Right? Yeah.
Well, I love that you're naming this, because I think this is one of the pieces that's really hard for folks sometimes. And I talk about it a lot in the book that I just wrote, which is a book about boundaries. But I think about boundaries in a slightly different way than some folks may, because I do think of them as external for sure. And you're going to talk to other people about where your boundaries are. And also, I actually think of them as highly internal. And so there's this truth that you just named that I think boundary work helps us with. The truth is, you're different from me. The truth is, my partner is different from me, and I'm different from him, and I'm different from my daughter, and she's different from me. And if we're going to make space for that and celebration for those differences, then we have to not respond to those differences as threatening, which is where some of that internal psychological boundary work comes in, where we can say, oh, wait, could I actually be accepting of your thoughts and feelings and be curious about them and not have to agree with them? And so I think what we're seeing what I'm seeing as I have this conversation and explore this, because when you all asked me to come on, I was like, really? My story's not that interesting. Okay, if you want me to.
We proved you wrong.
Right. But what's fascinating is that the amount of acceptance of differentiation in our relationship is pretty big. So we have lots of acceptance of the differences between us, and that's okay. And not just okay, it's not tolerated.
It's encouraged.
It's encouraged and celebrated. It's great. The Green Bay Packers played yesterday. I hear they won. That's very exciting in my household. I don't know anything about it. It's great. Go on with yourself and have a great football game. Right? And I cooked amazing food because that's what I wanted to do. And my daughter helped me some because that's what she wanted to do. And then, like there's space for us to have difference. So in that way, I guess we don't follow a monogamy map in a traditional form where you're supposed to think alike and be alike, because we're not like that at all.
Which I love. And in one of the questions I was going to ask that I don't even know that I need to at this point is, what are some of the, again, not to say that these are strictly non-monogamous mindsets, but some of the tools and strategies that show up in non-monogamy? Because I think the communication
that you're bringing to
monogamy, that you bring to your current partnership, because frankly, the conversations are often different because there are all of these shades of gray. There's not a lot of assumptions. Well, sometimes we make them and then we realize, wow, that was a bad idea because we just assumed and then it blew up in my face. But a lot of those assumptions can go on for years or decades in a monogamous partnership. And so it seems from what we've talked about today, you've brought a lot of the skills that you developed for, roughly a decade into this partnership, and that to give your husband a shit ton of credit, like he seems to have adopted a lot of those.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So one big one is a meta conversation. So can we have a larger conversation about a pattern that we're seeing while we're not in the pattern? But let's just talk about the pattern. That feels like a skill from the non-monogamy world that we use. And I try to teach all couples regardless of whether or not they were monogamous or not. I'm like, what you need is a meta conversation skill, which definitely lives there. I think too, there's so much, listening with acceptance is such a big value for me. And listening with curiosity and listening with like, ooh, I bet even how I took that in, I probably didn't get it all the way. So like listening deeply is such a value for me as a human, that I think that when we're in space together, I'm not likely to take what he says in a deeply personal way. I think I'm more likely to see it as like, ooh, that's some new information about you. Tell me more about that. Wait, I didn't understand what this thing is. Wait, what's happening inside when this is... So we're doing a lot of like here and now processing too. We're just like, wait, can we U-turn? So I think he's probably picked that one up for me some, but I U-turn in front of people on the regular. Oh, let me slow down for a second. Something big is happening inside, but I can't figure it out. Hold on. And so and then speak for whatever's happening rather than flying off the handle from what is happening, right? Yeah. And I'm thinking back to when Jason and I were together. Jason's the partner I was talking about, that I was with for a long term in college. A lot of our stuff was done in writing. And I think that really helped have some distance and some regulation.
Yeah.
Because this back in the day when long distance phone calls cost a lot of money and we were poor starving artists.
Yeah.
This was the reality, is that we mailed each other letters.
Yeah.
And so I'm just thinking back to like that time frame and being with like, oh, I bet learning to slow your pace and have less urgency around solving the emotional problem, but more patience in being in the emotional process.
Yeah.
Was a skill I already had and had developed during that time, but I'm taking it into this space. And I think that's just as helpful in monogamy. Here's what I have. I have news for all the monogamy folks out there, is that you can learn a lot from the skills of the non-monogamy folks because their communication skills are golden. They have to be. They have to be. You're going to learn an enormous amount if you can listen with more nuance.
Yeah. I so appreciate everything you just said.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. And I just have to touch on the written communication, because as you're saying that, it just like, there is so much to be said for handwriting something out. Like typing's better. I think typing can be one way, but handwriting, you're physically doing that. Like even just the motions can be regulating.
Yes.
And so you can get journaling, right? That's why journaling can be so helpful. But even to your partner, having conversations in a written format like that, does it take a lot of time? Yes.
Yes. Does it go way better? A lot of the time it does.
Right.
Yeah. And I love that. What I was going to touch on with that as well is even if you're not getting all of the introspection, right? Just the idea that I got triggered, and now instead of having to respond verbally, like if we're in a conversation, I get flipped, my lid's flipped. If that happens via email, like I have to write it all out, and then ideally you stop and you read it back and you go, okay, throw the first draft out. Let's start with the second draft, right? Just the amount of time, especially you're going to sit and handwrite it for me, that would take a month and I would have a cramp. But I would the process will pull me out of the triggered state. So the conversation is inevitably going to go probably smoother.
Yes.
Right? Do you still align? Maybe you don't align, but you're coming at it in a very different way. And we have had to really implement this through some hard parts of our marriage where text it to me. What you're about to say, I don't even want to hear it out of your mouth. Text it and I will text it back. There are times where we've had to do that and it goes better. And
it goes better.
You lose some tone of voice, you lose some nuance, but that's nice to be like, hey, you wrote this line. Did you mean it like this or did you mean it like this? Okay, well, we can follow. That's way easier than we're both like.
With particularly volatile or risky conversations that if you're trying to work through something in your relationship, I mean, it's just more regulating.
It is. And you know what else I'm thinking about? And I'm thinking about a couple I worked with recently, actually, and we implemented this particular skill. And it put the brakes on the urgency, right? Which was great because you took it out of panic, just taking down. But the other thing they implemented was that before they would send it, they would sleep on it and then read it again and rewrite it the next morning before they actually shared it. And then they were able to start seeing, oh, here's where I'm thinking of this in a really black and white way. And here's how I'm thinking of this in a more nuanced way. They could see where they were so triggered, they were having blind spots. So if you want a great way to see your own blind spots, write your partner a letter, but don't send it yet. Go reread it and rewrite it if you need to. Where you can, I guess I always ask us, what's the intention? What's the hope behind communicating this? Are you hoping to change them or are you hoping to share something about you? So for me and my partnership, I don't want to share anything with the hopes of him changing necessarily. I don't want to get him to be different than he is. What I want to do is share something that's true about me and put that out there and then see how he responds to that. Trusting that I'm okay with it. So I'll be okay even if he's not okay with it.
Right.
There's a lot of self-trust that goes into that amount of letting go.
Yeah.
Or I love we're using the word trust a lot, but I'm wondering if it's even more accurate to say, yeah, we're risking it, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. He risks trusting me that I could have these friendships and never turn them romantic. And I have. And he's right. He can trust me in that. Right. And I trust him in 1,000 ways too. Like it goes both ways. Right. But really what we're saying is I risk saying yes to you potentially hurting me and let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that there's any other way because I mean, to your point, you were in a marriage where your husband told you he wanted monogamy and then didn't. And so you could easily map that and go, my last husband told me he wanted this and cheated on me, so I'm not doing that, right? So he's trusting you. You have to trust him.
We risk it. We say, yeah, I risk believing you.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but it reminds me of a quote in one of Brene Brown's books about the risk in love is of heartbreak and how it's so brave to risk love because of the potential heartbreak and
not even potential heartbreak. I mean, I think if we're honest with ourselves about it, the definite heartbreak.
Yeah, right.
I'm not saying it will necessarily that the heartbreak equals ending the relationship because I don't think that always happens. But I think that there is some fact to face that if you're actually going to be willing to open yourself up to someone and there they are in their different mind experiencing the world in their different ways and they risk opening themselves to you, there's no way you don't hurt each other. It's just not possible. So shit.
Right.
So it's part of the risk that I'm taking though is saying I risk this and also I risk hitting that moment and learning that I could hold me through that. And maybe I don't even know what I could hold myself through yet because I haven't faced it yet.
Yeah.
But one day I will face the next thing and then I'll learn that I can handle that. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And takes time and practice and repetition and
totally.
Yeah.
Which I think is so tied into the boundary work and the way you describe boundaries and the way you see boundaries. And I mean, I'm very aligned with that because that gives you the strength to say when you do go to your partner and you share something about yourself, whatever, I love this thing. And they're like, yeah, I don't, right? That's a moment of maybe a little heartbreak. Like we don't love the same things.
Yeah.
Right. And
there's a little heartbreak there.
And if we're so tied to, we have to be 100% aligned, like heartbreak, right? Okay, we're not aligned. That's scary. That's a threat. She's going to leave. They're going to leave. And so having that internal boundary of saying, I'm okay that my wants and needs and likes and loves and desires are different than somebody else's. And we can still move through the world happily, healthily, loving each other and giving each other the room to grow and evolve because you're curious. You said that, like, I'm just curious. I want to learn more about my partner.
And he's different every day. So Yahtzee for me.
Right. Exactly.
If you think you know your partner, think again. He already changed. She already changed. They already changed. Yeah. This flow is actually really constant. And so even who I am today won't be exactly who I am tomorrow. So there's something new to discover in each other all the time, which is that makes it super fun. In that way, I guess monogamy feels to me like non-monogamy because I'm with a different partner every day.
Yeah.
I was going to say you're cheating on your husband with yesterday's husband.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
It's how you frame it. Yeah. 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 Oh.
I love it.
Thank you, Jules, for this amazing conversation. We just really appreciate you trusting us and like, oh, sure, I'll come on this podcast. So thank you. And just for everything that you shared.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I love it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, for anybody, just to remind people maybe how they can find you, and links will be in the show notes for stuff. But yeah, maybe if you want to share a little bit about your recent book that came out.
Oh, sure.
And then if there's anything else that you want to get out in the world today while you have the microphone.
Yeah. So I wrote a book, which is super weird for me. Can I tell people why it was so hard?
Of course.
Absolutely.
So I've always had these conversations about boundaries as conversations. And it's actually this co-created, like, oh, here's an idea. What do you think about that idea? Well, here's how that idea lands in me. And so I've always explored this and teaching people about threading the teaching of the neurobiology through these conversations that are very alive. Mm-hmm. And to put these ideas down in a static format was a really big fight with my inner system. It was really hard because it feels like, not the way the brain works to put this down in this written format. And I'm really excited that I did because it is available to more people this way. It's actually, I'm busy enough. It's really hard to have that conversation space. So I wrote it in hopes of making it an open conversation and not as a static, believe it my way sort of thing, but more like, here's some ideas to contemplate and here's some ways to greet your brain kindly as you explore these things. So that's my hope, is that it turns into a conversation between you and between you and anybody else you want to discuss these ideas with. So I wrote a book called Setting Boundaries That Stick. And it's all about neurobiology and how to work with your brain in building self-trust and being, I think the more self-trust we have, the more we can risk. So saying yes to risk and saying yes to protection. And so that you can say yes to your own empowerment. So I wrote that book, and then I don't know if people want to find out about me. I do workshops for couples. I do workshops for individuals. I do boundary workshops. I've got a couple spots left in the spring for people who want that. And you can find all that at my website, which is www.julianetaylorshore.com. And so if you want to follow me, feel free to join my newsletter or whatever.
Yeah, cool.
Amazing.
We will send lots of people your way.
Oh, thank you so much. I so appreciate you.
Definitely, as many as we can. And just to throw some weight behind the book, I'm about halfway through it myself, and it is fantastic. I would say it's an easy read for boundaries, right? I've read a lot of boundaries books, and it flows well, it reads well, it's not super thick. Our microphone's not sitting up 17 inches taller because it's underneath it. I'm really grateful for it because it is work that I know both of us have had a hard time with, and I'm really excited about a new resource for it.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We're just excited. We're so excited and grateful, and so grateful for you. So, thank you again. Before we let you go, is there anything else that you wanted to get out there on this podcast?
You know what I'm thinking that we say yes to grief and compassion in equal measure so that we can meet ourselves where we are in whatever relational dynamic we are looking for.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds easy.
Yeah.
We'll do that. I'll start tonight.
It's absolutely beautiful though. And it's work every day to do that.
It is work every day. I work on my relationship every day between me and me and between me and him. And that is the way it is.
Yeah.
I love that you say that because I think it's so easy for people to listen to these and listen to people who have been doing this, write books, do all the work, and like, well, they got it figured out. I got to be like Jules. I got to be like this person. It's like, we're in it too. We're swimming in the pool. These tools are the tools we use. And we, like you said, they change and you think you've got it. And then tomorrow it has to be slightly a different tool. And so I'm really grateful for this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
You too.
And we're back. Thank you so much, Jules, for everything you shared today. We had a blast talking with you. And thank you so much for all of the amazing work that you do. A quick reminder to anyone listening, go check out the show notes and you can find links to Jules' website where you can find all of the information about her, how to work with her, her new book, Setting Boundaries That Stick, and links to her podcast too, which she co-hosts called Why Does My Partner?
Yeah. I'll also throw a little weight behind. She does boundaries workshops.
Yes.
And I was fortunate enough to go down in February to Austin to be part of one of her in-person boundaries workshops. Life-changing work. Highly recommend her book. Highly recommend working with her if you can. not paid to say this in any way, shape, or form. So thank you again, Jules, for what the work you do is. If you'd like a little bit more information about boundaries without committing to all of that, highly recommend going and checking out Libby Sinbeck's podcast, Making Polyamory Work. There are 2 episodes linked in the show notes below that will take you to episodes from December of last year, where Jules and Libby dig deep into boundaries and all of that work. And so that's a great place to start and a great resource.
Yes. A quick reminder that our next virtual meet and greet is going to be on April 11th. Mark your calendars and go sign up now. And next week, we have an interview with Romy. This one's incredible as well, and we can't wait to get his story out there.
This is our first Mafia Boss run in.
That's true.
I'm so excited about this one. So it is a wonderful conversation. We will see you all next week. Also, Romy is not the Mafia Boss. I know that was misleading.
It was a little misleading.
Yeah.
He just had an experience.
Yes.
Yeah, that he talks about.
Can't wait. All right. We will see everybody in a week. Until then, we hope you have a wonderful weekend. Oh, fun thing, Emma.
Yeah?
You know what's on Friday?
Oh, yeah. Ask Us Anything.
Ask Us Anything. Episode coming out this Friday. Me, Shay, and I tackle some incredible questions from you, the listeners. If you would like your question to be on a future episode, you can head over to our website. Again, you were already there, I know, earlier, signing up for the virtual meet and greet and the community and STD check. You can also send us a voicemail or send us an email in for the Ask Us Anything.
Yes.
And with that, we will actually say goodbye. See you on Friday and then see you next week.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.